Excuse me. Hey guys. So I know it's been a little while since I've streamed. It's been...
Hey, Mary, this is Jessica's, right?
Yeah, what?
This ring? I think so.
Yeah, it is.
It's on the floor.
Yeah,
In the living room.
not surprised.
I
Anyway,
don't feel bad if she loses it, but I won't feel that bad.
not surprised to be interrupted within 10 seconds of starting my stream.
It's up there.
It's still...
Where I put the earring on.
Okay. Lovely. And it's like, I don't know how much harder I can point to the phone. Anyway. Yeah, haven't been streaming because I've been sick. I've had a really bad cold, and while that, like, I haven't really been out of commission. Like, I've still been, like, it's just been my voice has been really bad, and like I've had a bad cough, so like talking for long periods of time was like aggravating my cough. So, yeah, I just really hadn't been streaming, so I didn't want to, make a bad thing worse. But it's good timing because I'm feeling quite a bit better. My throat is feeling a lot better. Still working on some like throat lozenges and stuff, but I just started finally drawing my comic yesterday, and the one that I've been talking about starting forever. I was actually working on it, but I was doing all the behind the scenes stuff, like scripting it and thumbnailing it and stuff, and I just finished a few days ago scripting out the first issue, which is like I think 26 or 27 pages. I'm basically just working in this I have this little notebook that I've like done all the thumbnails and scripting in, and so yeah, that's been what I've been doing. So I feel like I've been excited to start it, not only because I just want to get it started already, but because I wanted to stream some of it. And obviously this is going to be like spoilers and stuff, so if you want to wait to read it until it's finished, then I would say don't watch these streams when I say I'm working on comics, but I'm guessing most of you probably don't mind, so. But that's just a warning that there's obviously going to be spoilers because I'm going to be streaming the actual pages, so. Warning is pretty obvious there. And I'm doing this, like I talked about, I'm doing like most of this comic freehand. I'm pretty much just like sketching out like the bounding boxes and the panel boxes, and then just working freehand off of my thumbnails. Which made me nervous at first, but so far it's been turning out really well, so happy about that. And I just, like, the only other thing I do is I obviously sketch out where I want the words to go, so like the syntax and placement doesn't look super ugly. And I took quite some time to like tweak the first issue. I have spent a lot of time like moving pages around and changing it up, because obviously the first issue of a comic is super important to kind of like set a lot of stuff up and, just get the story off on the right foot. And I'm really happy with it. It starts in a good way, because I like to not do it like a whole bunch of setup. Like I don't like to do, like a whole bunch of narration. Like I just remember, in like the older RPGs and stuff, whenever you start an old RPG, like you always have to sit through like, between 5 to 10 minutes of just like exposition, like setting up the world. Because some fantasy worlds are like so reliant on their like established like set of rules to tell the story. And while some of those elements will be present in this comic, I'm mostly aiming to just kind of like toss you into the world and have to like learn and figure everything out for yourself. I'm not a fan of like lengthy exposition. I actually try to do very little narration at all. And the narration I do is normally through the direct perspective of a character. It's not like an omniscient narrator. I feel like having characters narrate is more engaging. And also you get narration that is like I said, it's not omniscient, so it's opinionated narrative, and it's like a narrative from a certain perspective. So the person narrating may have a different view about something, or like may not have all the information they need to be commenting on a certain situation, but are commenting on it anyway. So you get kind of like a unique perspective, which I like. I like doing that. I like telling story through characters and telling story through dialogue and stuff like that. It's just my style. Because, like, trust me, I could spend pages and pages being like, this is what the world is. This is what the people in the world do. This is how they live. This is this place. This is that place, you know. Because, like, there's all sorts of, like, little rules and stuff like that with, like, the insects and, like, how they work. Like, how their hierarchy works. And all that stuff is going to be hinted at. And it's going to be stuff that you kind of, like, put together on your own over time. But kind of like lore, like, I always kind of aspire to be like the Souls games with telling my stories as much as possible. Like, the Souls games are amazing for their storytelling elements because, like, especially in Dark Souls 2 and even in Demon Souls, or not Dark Souls 2 rather, Dark Souls and Demon Souls. Like, Dark Souls, when that starts, there's like a couple minutes of cinematics to like kind of set the world up. But after they set the world up, they really don't tell you anything directly. Everything they tell you is through lore, like through item descriptions and hints, and you never really get the full story. You kind of have to like put two and two together, which I really, really like and respect about that series. And it's something that I kind of am inspired by and strive to achieve with my own storytelling. It's kind of it's a hard line to walk sometimes, because sometimes you want to say like, oh, this is a really complicated, complex concept that exists within this world. Like, I really want to explain it so the reader is on the same page, But kind of like having the power to be like, well, we'll kind of like leave it mysterious and let people kind of think about it is also like super rewarding. But the other advantage to watching me stream is I'll kind of like talk about some of that stuff too. So if you're curious about the lore of the world and stuff like that, then listening to me talk about it is also a good way to get a lot of that information. A good example would be that in the beginning of this comic, I'm pretty much like throwing you into like the lives of these two characters, like before everything starts going down, and like immediately before it starts going down. Very brief exposition. But I don't mention anything about their family lives or like what their living situation is. Like whether they live in a village or they live on their own. I'm not gonna hint. Well, I do hint at it very carefully, but I don't directly say like, whether or not they live together, they live alone, or they live in a village, or with their parents, or what, because all that stuff is going to come out in dialogue. Like, it wouldn't be natural to be introduced to these characters and then just them suddenly start talking about, like, well, this is what my mother's like, this is what my father's like, this is my living situation. Like, nobody talks like that in the real world. Unless you're, like, actually sitting down and, like, asking somebody these questions, which may happen at one point in the story, but it's not just going to, like, when you meet somebody, you don't say, like, hi, my name's Merrick, I live with my wife, and this is my mother, and this is what she's like, and this is what my village is like. You don't really do that. So I don't really comment on that, but it's stuff that's gonna come out later. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting pretty rambly. Anyway, thanks for stopping by, guys. I know it's been a long time. I'm sorry it's been so long. I've been trying to post like videos of time lapses and stuff more because obviously that doesn't require me to use my voice. And you may be able to hear that I'm still like a little bit scratchy. Um, just one of those like nasty dry coughs that like even long after you've gotten over the cold, like it just doesn't want to go away. It's just like uncomfortable and ugh. Hate being sick. Being sick is the worst. It's just like all the stuff that I want to do, and I just like have no energy. Feel icky, but it's like every year I get one bad cold. And yeah, it is the worst. But yeah, I hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys are having fun stuff planned for the holidays, and you know, I know a lot of you are probably finishing up finals and stuff. Like that's exciting. Fun stuff always happens towards the end of the year. People going on vacations, Christmas time, Thanksgiving. It's always just a good time to be alive. So, you may notice that like, you know, working comics is a little bit slower process than just sketching. And put a little bit more detail, a little bit more care into things, especially since I'm drawing everything freehand. So it's going to be like a little bit slower process. Like drawings will develop a lot slower than when I'm like normally working on my sketchbook and stuff. So just keep that in mind. That you're going to see a lot of like watching me stream comics is going to be a lot of like background work and you know writing text and stuff like that. That's a pretty interesting question. How do I decide my backgrounds? Well, I mean, it's just like setting. Like most of this comic is going to take place in like outdoors, um, because this world is set in. It's pretty much like what you could describe as like Dark Ages, like kind of basically like medieval level technology. This world is. So it's going to be a lot of like small villages, a lot of like you know sprawling outdoor settings. A lot of people like just you know live off the land, nomadically. A lot of hunter-gatherer type people. So this, because I love drawing like big outdoor vistas. I like drawing rocks and grass and trees and leaves and streams and stuff. So like that's a because like I just love nature. So that's like a big part of the choice to me to set these comics in like outdoor settings because I like drawing nature. I like drawing natural stuff. I'm not as big as on drawing like you know complex architectural stuff. So there's gonna be not as much of that in this comic book. But I pretty much like when I design my backgrounds, especially when I'm drawing them freehand, I basically use them as a frame for the characters. Like I place grass and rocks and stuff like kind of like framing around the characters and like I'm gonna draw some trees here and then I'm gonna draw like a big moon so they're both like sitting and looking at the moon. You know, romantic setting. But that's all like I love drawing backgrounds. I do, but for me in comics the characters are always gonna be like the main focus. Always going to be like what I really want you to be looking at. So while the backgrounds, I put a lot of detail into them to make them look nice, they're almost always designed to be a frame for the characters. Because obviously, if I had a choice to draw either backgrounds or characters, like I'm going to draw characters. So that's always going to be the focus in my work. Almost always. There's going to be very few instances in this comic book where scenery is going to be the main focus. Most of my stories are very character driven. And almost always like very, very sad. I'm one of those writers that like just aims to, you know, like totally toy with my readers like emotionally as much as possible. Not because I'm evil. That might be a little part of it, but like I always find that like the darkest parts of the human condition, and not in this case human, but they tend to be the most fascinating to me. And you know, nobody goes through life completely happy with happy endings all the time. Like there's going to be hardships, so I aim to explore that as much as possible. And there are a few things about the story that I refuse to spoil, but these characters are going to be facing a pretty huge hardship. And so far, the way things are going, that's probably going to be revealed in like the third issue, I'm going to say. First two issues are setting the scene. Third issue is going to be like when things really start happening. And I'm always open to your guys' feedback too, because like I always talk about, whenever I think about myself, I think about myself as a comic artist, but like I haven't really done that many comics. Like I've done a lot of planning for comics, and I've done a lot of writing, and I have a lot of stuff that's like in process, but I don't have a lot of stuff that's like in print, like out in the public eye yet. So any feedback you guys have is like totally welcome. Always. Or any questions, and you know, I always appreciate like the kind words and stuff. You know, I love you guys. You guys are the best. And I've missed streaming because I like streaming. I like hanging out. I missed it. So many little blades of grass and stuff. I'm just gotta. Because like when I think about going back to backgrounds, when I think about natural environments, like if you just even if you have like a yard or like go to a park or something, you know, it's not like there's like totally flat grass and you know it's totally open and there's no there's always like little rocks and you know pine cones or seeds or branches, and like the grass like goes up and down and there's little holes and stuff, so like drawing all those details is what really interests me. Like you could just draw this scene like all grass and it would just be like flat and it would look super unnatural because you know nature doesn't really work that way. Like nature is super dynamic. So when I'm drawing backgrounds, especially obviously natural ones, I'm always trying to think about you know what makes it, even if I'm not drawing in a realistic style, like what makes it look realistic. You know, there's more than one type of plant growing in one area. Leaves of grass are sticking out between rocks and stuff like that. All stuff that I like to think about. You know, what kind of like critters are crawling around, like little bugs everywhere. That's what's fun about drawing backgrounds for me. I haven't decided yet if these are trees or clouds. Probably trees. I think I'm just going to draw like, let's see. Oh yeah, I was planning on talking about that. How I'm planning on releasing this. The plan is, for the time being, to release these digitally. It'll probably be, I don't know, it's hard to say. Like, I'm working at a good pace now, but I don't know, you know, how it's going to continue. So it's either going to be either once a month or like once every 3 weeks is my estimate for now. I'm going to be releasing them digitally on Gumroad. And I'm not going to settle on like a super strict page count or anything. I'm going to between 24 to 30. I'm aiming for between 24 to 30 pages per issue. Whatever makes sense for the issue. Some issues are going to be 24 pages and be able to end naturally on 24 pages. Some are going to be able to end naturally on 30 pages. You know, it's like, it varies. But yeah, I'm going to release them digitally at first. And it depends on honestly how well it does. If it does really well, and you know a lot of people are buying it, and it's, you know, there's a high demand for it, and people really like it, then I'll probably move to print sooner. My plan for now, because I'm not going to count on like making a ton of money right away, obviously, because I'm only going to sell the digital issues for like probably $2. I'm thinking is a fair price. And then, you know, if I end up making a bunch of money, then I'll start printing them right away. And print like, you know, little basically little comic books, little paperback comic books to sell. And those will be like, you know, if you buy it, it'll come with like an original sketch inside or whatever. But the general plan would be to wait until I have several issues done, enough to like put into like a paperback, and then do like some sort of crowdfunding for the printing costs, because printing costs is expensive. I mean, to get like 50 small like comic books printed, like 30 pages a piece, with like you know, not super fancy paper or anything, it's like between $200 to $400, depending. I could probably get the price down to like $150, but it's expensive. So going to print right away is not something I'm going to be able to do. That's going to depend on demand. But I think releasing them at a steady pace digitally is a really safe bet for now, and that's pretty much what I'm planning on. Because like that's the most accessible way to do it. But yeah, I mean, it really just depends on how it goes. I mean, hopefully it'll go well. There seems to be a lot of you liking it. I get a lot of people asking me about it. So that's all. Those are all good signs. I'm just not the kind of person that's gonna like count on anything. I always kind of like play it by ear. It's just how I roll. So yeah, the plan is to do it digitally. Man, this pen is failing me. Every once in a while, these high-tech C micas, every once in a while I get one that just like doesn't want to work very well. And I mean, they're super fine, tiny roller balls, so like the occasional malfunction is to be expected. But damn, I like these pens. And I like drawing these characters, man. That's why I've been just drawing these characters like non-stop for I don't know, like a year, probably, like months, many months, is because I had planned to draw my comic book freehand. So like having those characters like pretty well memorized is pretty important. And just in general, trying to keep it, you know, super loose, like not really spending a ton of time on any one thing. Also, another pro tip for using these high-tech C pens is have more than one of the same size on hand if you're drawing like a big piece like this, because they like to, after a while of like just drawing with them, they like to, you know, start skipping a little bit. But that's when, like, if you just leave it sitting with the cap on, it'll, like, I don't know, the ink will, like, even out or something. I don't know exactly what's happening inside that pen, but, like, the ink will stop flowing as well, and then that's the time to switch to a different pen at the same size. So have more than one, like, you know, 04s on hand, so if one starts skipping, you switch to the other one. and let the one that's been skipping sit for a little bit and relax. Something I've learned just recently, actually, and that's why I have a tape on one and not on the other, so I know which one is which just by looking at it. So I don't have to like pull the cap off and test it to be like, oh, okay, that was the one that was skipping. Just so at a glance I know which one's which. And these pens have the awesome, probably often overlooked feature that the different sizes have different opacity of the caps. So like this is the 03, and you can see the cap is a lighter. It's more translucent than the 04. So they also have these huge letters on them, but just at a glance, if the letters are facing down, you can see which one is which size, which I think is a super, super awesome feature. Because things like this, like the Micron, as much as I love these pens, the graphics, if you use them for a while, they can scratch off and rub off, and you can no longer see what size it is, and like especially with the caps, like if that rubs off, or if you have a bunch of them sitting next to each other, and they're, this is a bad example, but if it's laying like that, you can't see the sizes. So at a glance, you have no idea what size it is, but you're looking for an 03, you have to go through all of your pens to find out which one's the 03. So, pro tip, if you do that, put a piece of tape on it, like this, and then just write like 02 on it. So at a glance, you can look and see that that one's the 02. It may sound silly, but like saving just a few seconds here and there can like really can affect a lot with drawing, especially if you're like on a roll. Like you don't want to stop to figure out what size your pen is. Like nobody wants to do that. Excuse me. So yeah. Anyway, that's me rambling. And if you've watched me stream before, you're probably pretty used to that by now. Almost done with this page. Just gotta work out this moon here. And I might, well, it's not gonna be that much. Oh, I gotta think about. Yeah, it's fine. That's fine. Look at me dropping stuff. Sorry, this stream is going to be a lot of me scribbling with these big panels. Got a lot of black spots to fill in. I might actually. I'm thinking for night skies, I'm gonna have to just fill them in black because otherwise it's gonna look weird. And if I'm drawing a lot of scenes at night with like really, large skies, as I will, definitely at some point, I'm probably gonna have to start just blacking in the whole sky. Just because I think it's safe to make the sky the one thing that is totally black. And then I go in later with like a gel pen, which I'll show you, and add in a star field by hand. Which, if you guys haven't done it, I'm going to show you how to do it. It's super fun. I like using these parallel pens to blacken lines or blacken spaces around line work because you can turn them at a lot of angles really quickly, so they're really fast at like getting around detailed line work. I have a decent amount of experience filling blacks for some comic book artists that you guys probably recognize if you're into comics. Filled a lot of blacks for Tony Fleece. He does a lot of stuff for done a lot of stuff for like Image, and currently draws like all the My Little Pony comics. And I've also filled a lot of blacks for Chris Burnham, who's did the entirety of Batman Incorporated. Currently working on, I think he's still working on it, Nameless, which is a super awesome series. So yeah, filling blacks, these are great. A lot of people who do it traditionally will always argue for brushes, but I use these. It's a Pilot parallel pen. That's what this is. There's a bunch of different sizes, so I use this small guy to get around all the lines, and then a larger one to fill in the big spaces. Makes my life a lot easier. Because like you may not expect it, but filling in black spaces can be one of the most time-consuming things ever. Not that it takes a particularly long amount of time, but it's super grating because all you're doing is just like filling stuff in. It's like, ugh. That's why so many comic book artists will hire somebody to fill blacks for them, because it's a lot of time spent doing something that's not enjoyable at all. Also, why I wanted to avoid with this comic, having a lot of big black spaces. I want things to feel very like natural and textured, and like having big black spaces is like super cool in certain situations, but just not what I want for this book. And for now, this book does have an end. It's set up to be finite. The world can continue, and there may be some characters, but again, it's something that's going to be based off of like the popularity. If it's not super huge, then obviously I'm going to finish it at some point and call it done. It's going to be a while. It's a long story, but the story arc with these characters has a finite end in my head. But if people are always like, "Oh man, like I want more," and it's doing well, and like I have the resources to keep working on it, then it's going to continue. And this book is going to be called Errant, for those of you who don't know. And I'll post as it gets closer to, as the first issue gets closer to done, then I will start posting stuff about like how it's going to release. It's going to be on Gumroad, like I said, digitally at first. It also depends on like how things go this coming year, because I want to look into, perhaps tabling at some conventions. And if I have the funds, and if I'm going to table at some conventions, then I'll probably print some, like a limited number of like the first couple issues, if I have them done by that point, to have something to sell at the convention, obviously. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Like, I really do have to play things by ear, the way my schedule works. We'll see. Yeah, Pilot parallel pens. That wasn't a huge area of black, but it did the job pretty as quick as I'd like it to. I don't like spending a lot of time on stuff like that. That's pretty much done. Once the ink is dry, I'll come back and show you guys how to do the starfield that I was talking about. Get a little bit of texture on that moon, just around the edges, because I want it to be like bright. And it should be pretty obvious that this doesn't take place on Earth, because, well, the moon isn't that close on Earth, and also, there's no humans, so that's probably a big part of it. I probably try to do like the local cons in California, maybe one or two in like Nevada or Arizona or something. Not sure which ones. I have to look. Probably the biggest one I'd try for would be WonderCon. I wouldn't try for Comic Con. I don't think I'm Comic Con material yet. But we'll see. It really depends on how well the comic book does too. If the comic book does well, then I'll obviously have more funds to be traveling and printing stuff and stuff like that. I hate to rely on money, but don't really have a choice. That's pretty much dry. I think I can get away with it. So, when I do like star fields, or even for like correcting small mistakes and stuff like that, I use this Jelly Roll white gel pen, and I just do star fields by hand. I try to like space them out as naturally as possible. And when I was filling blacks on Nameless, there was like every page had a star field because a lot of it takes place in space. So I hand filled like hours and hours worth of star fields. You can't see that super well because the way my lamp is, but you don't want to like super saturate it. You want to have just enough to have like some information in there, and make sure you're putting stars like close to objects because if you look in the sky, like things aren't just nicely spaced out from one another. Like they're gonna be right on the edge of objects, clustering next to each other. There's gonna be open spaces. Like it's all stuff you gotta think about when you want to keep stuff natural like that. Um, yeah, I think I'll. Let's see. I got my notebook here. Yeah, I'll move on to the. I'll move on to the next page. The next page is pretty simple. Not sure if I'll finish it, but I feel like I probably won't. I want to make sure my phone doesn't overheat. That's been an issue I was running into before. Okay, let's see. This page is gonna be like two big old panels. That's just to get an idea of that's pretty much as I'll do. Um, Space out the dialogue. Spacing text in comics is kind of a interesting thing because you don't want to have just like huge long single line to text. You want to kind of like group the text together in neat little boxes, and you want like if you can see here like each line is a similar size. You don't want to have like three lines of similar size and then have one word down here. So it looks weird. You want it to kind of like be visually pleasing and like easy to read, and obviously not like cut huge swaths through the art. It's something I think a lot of people that are starting out in comics may not really think about, because it's not something that's like, super super prevalent. I'm going to try to center that a little bit more, because I want it to all fit neatly inside that little box. And I think that works pretty well. So even when you're writing, like, you kind of have to consider how it's going to look on the page when you put it in. And a lot of people, I feel like nowadays most people actually do all of the lettering digitally, or they do it by hand and insert it digitally. I'm stubborn. I don't want to do all the work of putting stuff in digitally, and I like doing stuff like this. I don't know, like, call me a hipster, call me whatever you want. Like, I just like doing things the old-fashioned way. At some point, like, the most I'd get, the most I would do as far as, like, inserting things after the fact would be like drawing them on a separate piece of paper, cutting it out, and like taping it on to the page before I scan it. But even then, like, I kind of want the comic to be like its own singular being, like, not be a whole bunch of separate pieces that, when put together, create a comic. I want it to be able to be, something that exists on its own. Also, considering people that may want to buy the original pages will be able to buy the pages with the dialogue on it. Because one interesting thing, like, if you've been to conventions, you probably know this, that if you look through a comic book artist's, like, big book of pages they have to sell, most of the time there's no dialogue on those pages. Because it's put in digitally, or it's put in after the fact in some way. If you look at really old comics, look at the original boards, you'll see that there is dialogue on it, because obviously people used to do it by hand before computers became widely used for that kind of thing. And I don't have super neat handwriting, so I just try to, like, it still has my personality. Like, I don't think I'll ever hire a letterer, because, like I said, I want it to be like its own thing. I don't know. I'm just weird, guys. I just like doing things the way that I do them. And, like, I worked on computers for so long. Like, I worked so long just staring at a screen for 8 hours a day for like 6 years. And I'm, like, honestly I'm done with it. Like, I don't want to be in front of a computer all the time. Even if it's more convenient, or it would make my life easier in certain aspects, like, I'm just not. I don't want to. But one little technique I use is I use a different pen to do the lettering and the text boxes from the line work. So I'm using High-Tech C for the line work, and Sakura Micron, and occasionally Sharpie pen for the lettering. So it has an inherent different look to it, which separates it from the line work. This is gonna be like the easiest panel to draw ever, because I'm just gonna draw like this little, basically like a meteor, what this thing is. The people in this world refer to it as starfall, but it's a meteor. They just don't know what to call a meteor. I have like a term for it. Because I'm sure as our ancient ancestors got like super freaked out when they saw like comets and shooting stars and stuff. You'd be totally weirded out too if you lived your whole life like looking up the sky and like wondering what it was all about, and then suddenly like you see this thing like streaking across the sky. What if like an asteroid, like a meteorite hit the ground or something like that? That'd be super freaky. See, I'm trying to think about what I'm gonna do here because I want it to be kind of like, I don't know, I might just fill in the whole thing black. I was thinking about doing like a little bit of shading around it, but I feel like it would look weird. I'll probably leave some space around it just in case I decide to, or I might try it and then decide to go over it later, but for now, I'm going to leave some space around it. Getting use out of that parallel pen some more. And obviously I'm going to fill this whole space in, but I'll do that later because I don't want you guys to just watch me filling in black spaces for long periods of time, and I don't want to smear the ink, because it's going to be obviously a big area of like super dark ink. Fill all that in. Okay, so you guys have watched me draw backgrounds, you watched me write, and now you can actually watch me draw. So sorry it took me so long to get to this point, but I'm actually going to draw some characters now. Okay, so I'll just really briefly show you. This is this page. As you can see, the meteor panel up here, and basically just two faces down here. This is as much pre-visualization as I'm doing. So just going from scratch. So that's what I'm looking at. If you see me like not drawing for a second, I'm looking at the thumbnail and like trying to visualize it in my head. One of my favorite things to draw is Aleste's little short bangs. It's something, I don't know exactly what it is about them that's just like really fun to draw, but they're really fun to draw. Sorry, I'm super concentrating. Always just really enjoy drawing hair. It can be really hard to make it look natural though. And I do kind of have to, at least I feel like I have to, make it look natural, because obviously this is a comic about, you know, like people who happen to be covered in fur, so being able to draw convincing fur is kind of important to this comic, I think. So I also spent a lot of time, like, practicing drawing hair and fur, obviously. And also trying to draw in a way that I don't have to draw every single individual little detail. Also important. Just enough information to make it convincing, but not enough to make it take forever. I think one of the biggest difficulties, and man, prepare for me to rant and ramble some more. This is just gonna be just gonna be one of those days, because I've had so much time of like I haven't been streaming, so I've like had a lot of stuff like on my mind, and I've kind of been storing stuff to talk about for the next time I streamed. Um, but one thing that like I have found really difficult about comics in the past when I've done them, and have essentially made it like a goal to change in the future, was how long I spent on them. And not that you shouldn't spend a lot of time on your comics, because comics comics are something that's gonna take a lot of time regardless, because you're it's not like doing one drawing per page. Like, you're obviously doing multiple drawings per page. You have to think about the setup and all a whole bunch of other stuff that you wouldn't normally have to think about when you're doing like just a regular drawing. So comics just take time. But when I've done comics, the last few comics I've done in the past, while they turned out really well, they took what I felt was way too much time uh, to execute. And I think I need to do something about her chin. I think that's a little better. Whiteout is your friend, guys. Or whiteout is your friend. Um, so I've been kind of like strategizing prior to actually starting this book a few days ago as to how I was going to be able to make a comic that felt like it was moving at a good pace, because prior, like I said, it felt like it took too long. And I'd be spending hours and hours and hours on one page, and man, I just like I have a super super small attention span. Like, I visualize the page and I'm like, oh man, this page is gonna be great, and then after drawing it for an hour and like it's not done yet, I'm just kind of like I start to get really sick of it, and I just want it to be done. Like, I want that image in my head to be on the paper already. And this probably applies to a lot of artwork too, not just comics, but like I needed to find a way to not get super bored with my comics before they were done, to still keep it interesting, because a lot of times I got bored and I wouldn't want to do it anymore, and like, that's not good. Like I want to be able to enjoy my work while I'm doing it. So uh, choosing to draw this um, mostly freehand was that had a lot to do with it. Because it's a little bit faster, and I don't get super tired of the pages before they're done. So chalk it up to me just being like a big baby with a short attention span, but that's part of my process going into this. Should I drop her chin down even more? Maybe. No, I don't know. It doesn't have to be perfect. That's the other thing about comics is it doesn't have to be perfect, just like anything else. Don't strive for perfection because you'll never get it. Just strive to make it good. It doesn't have to be perfect. And seriously, don't be afraid to use whiteout. You don't hurt anybody but yourself by not using it. Like people, I get it a lot, and trust me, I'm super flattered. But when people watch like my time lapses and stuff, where I've been, um, where I've done a lot of freehand drawing and stuff like that, people are like, how do you draw without making mistakes? Well, this stream is a perfect example that I make plenty of mistakes. I've used whiteout like 4 times on this. Um, and yeah, it's not about not making mistakes because like I'm gonna make mistakes. I know that. So it's just about learning to live with your mistakes, or make them look like they were intentional, or using whiteout to cover it up so people can't see it. Like if you go into art thinking like, okay, I'm not gonna make any mistakes this drawing, like you're gonna have a bad time because you're gonna make mistakes. I promise. No such thing as a drawing without mistakes. So once again, just try to make it good. Don't try to make it perfect. If you try to make it perfect, you're gonna find that you're not able to make it perfect, and it's gonna frustrate you because you want to make a perfect drawing. Also, good to when you look at other people's art, look at it through a lens of okay, well this say you really like a particular drawing by a particular artist. You're like, wow, that it's perfect. Like it doesn't look like they made any mistakes. Trust me, they made mistakes. Whether it was, it took them several dozen tries before they got to that drawing, or they had to erase a bunch of stuff, or they had to, go over a bunch of stuff in whiteout. Like, trust me, they made mistakes. Or they made mistakes and, like, covered it up with, like a black space or something. Trust me, no artist makes a drawing that's without mistakes. To err is human, and you're human, so you're going to make mistakes. Not trying to be a downer. I'm just saying that it's like just something that like you learn to the sooner you come to terms with it, the better time you're gonna have. Take it from me. I've been in that place of like trying to make a perfect drawing and getting frustrated when I can't do it. And it shouldn't have been this massive revelation that like, oh, maybe I should stop trying to make a perfect drawing. It shouldn't have been this like huge revelation that like took me a lot of time to get to. So hopefully, you know, if I can impart that way of thinking to you, then I will try. Yeah, mistakes are part of it. You just learn to embrace it. Like, I probably could have drawn that face better, but it's not bad. Looks good. It works for what I want out of this scene. So she looks as surprised as shit, and that is the idea. So look like they're in the middle of like a makeout session, like this just see a shooting star for the first time, because that's the idea. Remember to fill that out later. Hey everybody, if I haven't said hi to you yet, and thanks for stopping by. I'm probably going to be done with this pretty soon. I'm probably going to finish up this panel and then call it for now. She got big old cat eyes. I think I've decided to start drawing everybody with feline-like slits for pupils. It's just sick of trying to draw traditional eyes and not liking it. I can do what I want. I'm the artist. Do what I want. Bam. Is that better? I think so. And in reality, with comic books, like people are only gonna look at each panel for like a few seconds. Like it's rare that people will spend a long time looking at the art, and I think a lot of time it's not saying that people don't appreciate the art or anything. Like I think a lot of people will read it through and then come back to it later and like really flip through it and look at the art, and I think that's fine. That's totally fine. That's just the reality of comics. Um, so it's good to keep in mind to like make something that you know doesn't take you a super long time to make, simply because people are only going to be looking at it for a few seconds. Now, I'm not saying don't put like awesome detail and stuff into your work, because you absolutely should do that, because detail makes things interesting and makes them realistic. But at the end of the day, don't spend a ton of time busting your ass because people are only going to look at it for a short period of time. Also because like I said, I'm just an impatient person. And also, take all this with a grain of salt, because this is just my way of doing things. If you want to spend hours and hours on one page and make it super amazing and detailed, then man, more power to you. You can do more than me. And there have been many comic book artists that take a very long time to finish their work, and it shows, and it's amazing because of it. Like Jeff Darrow, his comic Hard Boiled, I think took him over a year to draw, and it's like a single trade paperback in length. Took him over a year to draw it. But when you look at it, like there's so much detail, and like everything is so richly detailed that it's like, damn, like it's amazing, and it totally like his hard work pays off. But I don't have the patience to do that kind of thing. So I'm just giving you my perspective. Keep that in mind whenever I say something. I'm not saying that there's a right or wrong way to do anything, and if you do it a different way than me, then you should change. I'm not saying that at all. I'm simply giving you ideas and the way I see things. So don't think that you should not spend a lot of time making the art good because people aren't going to be looking at it. That's totally not what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say that keep in mind that you don't have to spend a ton of time on the art. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect every single frame. That you can make something that still looks good and still gets the point across without killing yourself. I guess is what I'm trying to say. If nothing else, what you get out of this is I'm a big impatient baby, and I don't like waiting for things. I absolutely don't. I always pay extra for expedited shipping. I just hate waiting for anything. Alright, let's spend some more time scribbling before we sign out here. I'm just doing, like, some panels, I'm not going to do super richly detailed backgrounds. I kind of try to do like a manga type thing sometimes, and just do kind of atmospheric backgrounds that aren't like actually anything, like they'll put like a screen tone in the background or something, just to like fill up the space. Especially in a panel like this where like obviously the focus is the characters, like I was talking about before. I'm just going to do a background with like some textures in the back, like maybe it's mist, or maybe it's like bushes or something. It doesn't have to be anything. It can just be something to fill up space. And I would not say to do that all the time. And I probably wouldn't do it more than like once or twice per page. You can do it more than once per page if you have a page with a lot of panels, and like maybe 2 or 3 of the very small panels that just have characters like talking or like doing something, like moving their hands in a certain way or something like that. Then you can do it. But you're always going to want to try to have at least one background per page. Just to keep the characters rooted in the reality, and to keep the reader, even if subconsciously, reminded that this is taking place somewhere. Like if you have 2 characters talking in a cafe, and you have like one large panel like this of the 2 characters in the cafe and all the details of the cafe behind them, and then 6 panels of them just talking and having conversation. You draw that big detailed background once, and then in all the little smaller panels, like you can maybe put like a chair in the background, or just do some like, I don't know, like some lines or something. I don't know, like. But also, if you want to draw that detailed cafe with 20 people in it, 10 times per page, then go right ahead. But even the best comic book artists in the biz take shortcuts. And it's not a bad thing to take shortcuts. And like opinion warning right here. A lot of artists, and I'm not mentioning anybody in particular. I see nowadays take the shortcut of drawing a background once and then inserting it digitally into each panel. And something about it bothers me, and I think it might be like just me who thinks this, but it looks weird to me. Like when I look at the page and I see the same exact background, or like the same exact person, like if you draw like a background person and then transpose that background person as like another scene, it just bothers me. And I can't put my finger on exactly why that is, because I'm the one here that's, advocating taking shortcuts and stuff. So I don't know why it bothers me, but it just does. Like I would prefer to see the background drawn once and then, like screen tones in the background for the next several panels, than seeing the same background transposed into each panel. And I might have to think a little bit as to why that is. But yeah, maybe it's like less authentic, or maybe you're making the fact that you took a shortcut more obvious, like that might be it. But I don't know. It just bothers me. Like, I think it's fine to take shortcuts, but maybe like blatantly saying like, "Hey, I took a shortcut," is like not the way to go. And maybe it's just because it takes me out of the story. That might be. It might be something as simple as that. That it just like ruins the suspension of disbelief for me. I think that might be it. No, maybe I'm just being weird. I am weird and fickle on a regular basis, so it shouldn't surprise you that I'd be that way now. I'm gonna put a little extra lines in here so you can go back with a smaller pen, but you can clearly see like where the characters start and end. I'm sorry if the camera's bouncing a little bit. If you guys watch that video, it's on my YouTube if you haven't seen it, of my workstation and how it's set up. You can see that I'm using like this microphone stand, and it bounces just ever so slightly when I really start scribbling, so sorry if that's bothering you. I'll try to use one hand to keep it steady, but I feel like my hand's just bouncing now. I'm totally scribbling out of the frame there, sorry guys. I wanted you to see the scribbles. But yeah, I'm going to be working on this comic a lot more. And actually I'm going to be able to start working on it earlier in the day, so I'll be able to start streaming on a regular basis, like during the day, like maybe for a half hour or an hour at a time. So there's more to come. Sorry, like, to make up for the long dry spell of streams from me, I'm going to be streaming a lot more in the future, so that's good, right? And I'll be streaming the comic a lot, so be taking you guys' questions as always, talking about comics, talking about unrelated stuff. Doesn't matter. I just like chatting it up with you guys. Almost done scribbling, I promise. I just really like, it takes a long time, but I don't know, I just really like the texture. And it's another thing that took me like way too long to realize, but it's like, stop trying to do stuff that you think you should do, and that you think like you have to do, like, you know, comics are done a certain way, so I have to do them a certain way too. Don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. Do things the way you want to do them. I can't stress that enough. Just do you. Just do what you want to do, and people will like you all the more for it. Like, I felt really bad back in the days when I was trying to be like other artists or do things that I thought was good because other artists were doing them, or I felt like it's what I had to do. I always felt like really bad when somebody's like, "Hey, I really love your style," and I knew like that I wasn't fooling myself. I knew that that style was like either heavily borrowed or like not true to myself. It felt bad, but now I don't know. Like, now that I'm doing stuff that I feel is a lot more truer to me, it feels so good when I get complimented because people are like, "Man, I really dig your style," and I really feel like it's my style. I feel like it's something that I'm doing that's like mostly me. You know, you're always gonna be influenced by other people, but I don't know. I love you guys. I appreciate all the kind words. If nothing else, that's what I'm trying to say. I really appreciate you guys coming to hang out and watch me scribble and listen to me ramble and yell about things and talk about my crazy thoughts on comics and art and BS like that. Really appreciate it. So that's probably going to be it for today, at least for this stream. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to stream again today. Playing it by ear. That's, you know, how it's going. But yeah, thanks for stopping by. I hope you guys enjoyed hanging out and watching me draw. And I really appreciate you guys coming by. And I hope to see you next time. I love each and every one of you. And I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.